A man is running through a dark forest in Ireland. He seems frightened, constantly encountering signs with the words "point of no return" and various numbers indicating directions or distances to something. Despite his efforts, he fails to escape. Darkness quickly envelops the surroundings, a flock of birds flies overhead and he falls into a pit. In the next moment, an invisible force grabs him and drags him away. Elsewhere in the country lives an artist named Mina who works in a pet store. One day, her boss asks her to deliver a rare parrot to a zoo in a neighboring city, and Mina agrees. She takes the bird home for the night. There she tells the parrot that her mother died 15 years ago. Suddenly, the bird starts to respond. In the evening, Mina puts on a wig and goes to a bar, where she introduces herself to a guy with a fictitious name, claiming to be a ballerina. In the morning, Mina apologizes to the parrot for her behavior, saying the real her would probably not be liked. Finally, the pair set off on their journey. On the way, her sister Lucy calls, reminding her that she has family and nieces who love and await her. Mina continues driving and eventually ends up on a road leading into an old dark forest. Unexpectedly, the car breaks down and stalls, and the connection mysteriously cuts off. Taking the parrot's cage, Mina steps onto the road to seek help, but the forest is dark and empty. When she returns to where she left the car, the road is deserted. Talking to the bird to keep herself cheerful, she suggests they name it Darwin. Suddenly, she notices a woman running past and decides to follow her. Mina catches up with her near a small forest cabin, and the woman, opening the door, orders her to come inside quickly if she wants to live. Naturally, Mina rushes into the cabin. The elderly woman introduces herself as Madeline. She has been living here for some time with two other young people, Sierra and Daniel. Madeline immediately orders Mina to stand in front of a mirror because the watchers cannot enter inside but observe from outside, coming every night after sunset. Standing by the mirror, Mina suddenly hears sounds like applause. Madeline confirms her suspicions. The watchers are applauding the appearance of a new object. In the morning, Mina announces that she intends to leave. The watchers assure her it's impossible, but she heads into the forest anyway. Madeline catches up with her, explaining that the forest causes hallucinations, but it is possible to survive here. The signs scattered throughout the forest mark the boundary from which a person can reach the cabin before dark. If you go beyond the boundary, there will be no way back. These signs were made by a man named the Professor, but no one knows where he is now. That night, Daniel puts on a show for the watchers, presenting them with the newcomer, Mina. However, they ask her to behave as usual. Meanwhile, Shira turns on music and dances, as she does every evening. Mina, on the other hand, finds discs with recordings of Love Search TV shows. In the morning, she and Ciara go to gather medicinal herbs because Ciara's missing husband asked her to take care of Daniel before he went searching for a way out and disappeared. Ciara explains that recently they found strange burrows scattered throughout the forest. That's where the watchers go during daylight hours. She believes she has been in the cabin for almost 5 months. Later, Madeline announces the safety rules. Never leave at night, never open the doors for anyone, and always try to stay in the light. Life takes on a strange rhythm, with days that seem entirely identical. Mina watches endless shows and often stands staring into the mirror. One day, she knocks on the mirror and immediately there is a knock on the door. Madeline orders everyone to freeze, and everything stops. The next day, Mina and Daniel go hunting. Daniel tells her that Madeline used to work at the university and considers herself a know-it-all, but she has been living here the longest. Daniel himself has been in the cabin for 8 months but has never seen anyone else. After listening to him, Mina convinces Daniel to help her explore a burrow. Using a rope, Mina descends and explores it, finding old items, newspapers, toys, pieces of electronics, and an old bicycle. She ties the bicycle to the rope and sends it up. However, strange sounds, similar to those heard at night outside the cabin walls, echo from the darkness. Mina screams, and the rope falls at her feet. Climbing out into the light, Mina leaves the dangerous place and they calmly examine the items. With the bicycle, it might be possible to escape from here, but Madeline has a rather strange reaction to this. Meanwhile, Daniel manages to assemble a surveillance system from the found pieces of electronics and installs a camera by the door. At night, everything goes as usual. Ciara dances when there is a knock on the door, and Daniel suggests that a person has come. Madeline forbids opening it, but they hear the voice of Ciara's husband. Ciara tries to prove that it is John by asking him what book she is reading, but he does not answer. Although they bought this book together on his advice, the man begs to be saved from death. Ciara asks him to look into the camera, but when he leans towards it, something drags him into the forest. Madeline stands in front of the people as if shielding them, and the knocking stops. In the morning, Madeline throws the bicycle into the burrow, demanding that they no longer break the rules. Later, Mina recalls her sister and mother, who invited the girls for a car ride. The weather was beautiful, and Mina opened the window. Her mother asked her to close it because the wind was bothering her, but Mina didn't listen, mimicking her mother. Distracted from the road, a tragedy happened, for which Mina still feels guilty. Winter arrived soon after. The days grew shorter, the nights colder, and food became increasingly scarce. Quarrels began to flare up among the cabin's inhabitants. One day, Chiara left for the forest. Mina caught up with her, and Chiara confessed that she felt John was real. They hurried back to the cabin where Daniel's screams could be heard. He was angry with Madeline and Mina, refusing to let them inside. The women hid under a tree and soon witnessed lanky, spider-like monsters emerging from the forest. These creatures approached the cabin window, emitting terrible shrill noises. The watchers observed Daniel and Ciara while Mina and Madeline waited for them to leave so they could return to the cabin. When the creatures departed, the women rushed to the door and begged to be let in. Daniel initially refused, but Mina opened up about her guilt towards her mother's death, pleading with him to understand her lifelong suffering. Touched by her honesty, Daniel finally opened the door. Inside, the four of them immediately stood in front of the mirror, hoping to convince the watchers that they were in place. Madeline confessed that she had tried to protect them from certain things. Once a history and mythology teacher, she came to the cabin voluntarily and only then realized its true danger. She recounted a time when she hunted alone and saw herself at sunset. The Watchers are an ancient species known by many names: changelings, winged ones, fairies. They study people to impersonate them and ensure they never leave. Knocking and voices of the cabin's inhabitants are heard outside. Then, Daniel discovers a hatch in the floor, previously unknown to them. Descending through it, they find a well-fortified and equipped living space filled with food and equipment. Mina activates an old computer, revealing a video recording showing the face of the professor, whose real name was Rory Kilmartin. He was the first to study the Watchers and attempted to uncover their origins. In 1979, the scientist discovered this place, which he named Wonderland. Every evening, the Watchers would come to his window and observe him. For years, his colleagues had mocked him, disbelieving his stories. The professor built a bunker using labor from nearby remote villages. He chose loners or those with questionable backgrounds, ensuring their disappearances wouldn't draw attention. Each evening, he persuaded them to dine outdoors, hiding indoors to watch the Watchers deal with them. Thus this bunker was built on blood. One day, a Watcher appeared before him in the form of a girl with red hair. She was markedly different from the others, unique, curious, and seemingly harmless. That's when he realized that unlocking the secrets of the fairies might hold the key to conquering death. Against all odds, he lured the girl into a cage and began experiments in communication, attempting to befriend her. She would change forms, sometimes appearing as a frightening creature with long arms, yet she seemed to listen to him. Gradually, she became close and understandable to him. However, the professor ultimately felt he had achieved nothing significant and was ready to end his life. He hid a boat by the river, the only way out. "Just follow the birds," he instructed the survivor, asking them to go to his university office and destroy all documents found there. Then he intended to join the girl and remain there forever. In the final recording, they saw Kilmartin climbing into the boat. Gunshots rang out, followed by eerie silence. Realizing it was their last night in the forest, Chiara turned on the music and invited Daniel to dance. However, he seemed upset about leaving, revealing his dysfunctional family and nowhere to return to. Ciara offered him to stay with her for a while, assuring him they had become good friends and would find him a good occupation and place to live. In the morning, the group set out to escape, guided by the signs and Mina's parrot, whom she had asked to lead them. Soon, they reached a massive stone disc embedded in the ground, covering the entrance to a vast tunnel. Madeline explained that this was where the last remnants of an ancient fairy race were imprisoned, once friendly with humans but now consumed by hatred. Held by magic, they needed to flee far away. They walked all day, dusk falling without sight of a river or boat. As rain began to pour, despair set in until they spotted huge flocks of birds flying in one direction. They chased after them and finally reached the river. The women rushed towards a boat, but Daniel heard screams behind him and saw John. Overjoyed that John survived, he rushed towards him, only to realize it was a changeling. The women screamed for Daniel to run, but he didn't hear them and tragically died at the hands of the Watcher, who then assumed his form. Meanwhile, Madeline, Mina, and Ciara sailed down the river. They awoke in the boat and realized they had returned to civilization. Stopping a bus, they rode to the city, listening to music and reflecting on their journey. It was only then that Mina decided to visit the university where Kilmartin had worked, posing as his niece to enter his office and fulfill his final request. There she discovered more documents, photos, and a recording where Kilmartin discussed the fairies and the existence of half-blood children in the world. Mina found a stack of photos and was deeply surprised as she looked through them. In the evening, she went to Sarah's house, showing a photo of Madeline from the professor's belongings and explaining that Madeline was his wife who had died several years ago. The Madeline they had lived with in the cabin was a special fairy capable of moving during the day. Kilmartin had caught her, unable to bring himself to kill her, and she had taken on Madeline's form to return to civilization. Suddenly, a car pulled up to the house and the real Ciara got out. The girl Ciara Mina was talking to turned out to be a fairy. Realizing she had been exposed, the fairy knocked Mina unconscious and transformed into Daniel. The fairies just wanted to live peacefully like other species, but human hatred had forced them to live underground. The fairy intended to kill Mina but hesitated when Mina mentioned there were others like her, half-human, somewhere out there. Mina acknowledged the unfairness of humans banishing the fairies from their world. Moved by Mina's words, the fairy softened and spread her wings. She admitted that Mina might be right, then flew away. Mina revived Ciara and later reunited with her twin sister Lucy, finally forgiving herself for their mother's death. Mina shared her experiences with Lucy, admitting she still saw Madeline appearing in various forms of people. Her nieces arrived, showing Mina a drawing of her and Darwin, whom she still kept as a pet. Meanwhile, outside, a girl with red hair appeared, peering at their apartment windows before morphing into a girl with an eerie visage. This tale might not be from a horror movie, but rather a chilling bedtime story for when children resist sleep and crave something frightening. The narrative built up slowly and artfully, though the ending unfolded somewhat mundanely, yet with an air of mystery lingering.